Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. This is a quick update about the current state of the UDPI risk indicators for Bitcoin and 24 altcoins on 3 different time frames. So what we're looking at here is the BTC UDPI risk gauges. UDPI stands for Upside Downside Potential Indicator, and the way to interpret it is that when the needle points to the left, that means that the model considers there to be more realistic upside potential than downside potential for that time frame, whether that's long, medium, or short term. And the opposite is true when the needle points to the right. In that case, it indicates that the model considers more downside to be realistic than upside potential for that time frame. And what's evident from these gauges is that Bitcoin is now moderately low risk according to the UDPI, especially in the longer term time frames. But even on the shorter term time frames, the model is considering upside potential to be more realistic than downside potential in the short term. Now, as I noted in yesterday's video, this is the UDPI charts for the medium and long-term UDPI superimposed over each other. The red is the medium term and the green is the long term. And what we see that's just recently happened is that the medium term rather has changed trends and seems to be ticking back up again. So the risk is actually increasing and returning toward that zero midpoint, while in the long term, that's not the case. It's continuing in its downtrend for now. And what we noted during the video is that the most convincing bottoms often come when the medium actually gets lower than the long-term risk. And so we don't see that, and that's just another confirmation of what we can see on the charts, that Bitcoin is kind of ranging and consolidating and doesn't seem to be going into an extremely volatile move just yet that could kickstart another market cycle. But this is something that we want to keep an eye on, how these relate to each other, and we'll continue to do that. But I also want to bring up the other gauges for all 24 altcoins. So this is the alts on the long term, and there's a lot of variability here. You know, there are some that are quite low risk according to the UDPI, especially KSM, almost maxing out the scale at -5, and DOT, although not quite to the same degree. Also, interestingly, Litecoin is quite low risk at the moment. None are really particularly high risk at all. The highest value here is Luna, which is 1.62, which is not an especially high risk reading on the long term. If we go over to the medium term, we can see that the situation starts to change a little bit in some ways, but it's similar in other ways. Particularly, it's similar to the downside, meaning the low risk, low UDPI readings, KSM and DOT especially, are still quite low risk on the medium term, just like they were on the long term. But we also see some higher risk readings starting to emerge on the medium term that were not there really on the long term. That's Atom at 2.70, and to some degree also Phantom at 2.07. So on the long term, we see some very low risk readings, not really much high risk. On the medium term, we start to see both low risk and high risk readings. On both, there's quite a bit of variability between these assets in terms of their level of risk. Lastly, we'll take a look at the short term here. And it doesn't look all that different, although some of the higher risk options are even higher risk than they were on the medium term chart. But there are still some quite low risk options. KSM and DOT are still leading the pack. So that's consistent across time frames. Whereas the higher risk ones do not seem to extend to the longest term time frame and are only flashing this relatively high, although not extremely high level of risk. And I'm talking about Atom and Phantom especially, only on the short and medium term time frames. So if you guys like the content, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, give the video a thumb up. That would be appreciated, even 2 thumbs up, and follow us on Twitter. We'll see you next time.